Hi there. Today we're going to look at the web clipper component. This is very similar to the managed browser component that comes with Domino in that it can show web pages when you give it a URL, but unlike it, you can do additional things. You can show only part of a web page, and you can extract data from the web page, and do other such fun things, which we'll look at now. For starters, when we type in a web address, it will load that and display that web page. Pretty simple. But we have other options that we can use. For example, the input URL, we can choose to make just part of it, and we can tell it through an advanced component property how to work out the rest of it. If we give the value to a URL mask, we can specify an arbitrary string, in this case most of the URL, and then insert a %URL placeholder to say, take the incoming action and put the value of it in this spot here. So if we do that, and we go back to the input here, we can just type in the actual suffix, and it displays the page. It constructs the URL itself. This is very handy for when you have a data set that doesn't have the complete URL to the page you want to do. It just has a subsection. It could be an input to a search or something like that. In this case, it's very simply the end of the URL. We just tack it onto the end, and we get what we're looking for. A complete web page, it doesn't look particularly nice displayed in a component. We really would ideally just like to display part of this. Now we can do this by supplying regular expressions that say where to chop bits to retain a certain amount of content. And to work this out, we're going to have to look at the HTML that's behind the page. It's not always pretty, but neither are regular expressions, so a certain amount of dirty work is necessary. So as it turns out, the bit that we want is inside of this section here. So what we look for is something that uniquely defines the start of this, which would be this section here, and also defines the end of this, which would be this section here. Back under Advanced Component Properties page, we entered these two values as the HTML prefix and the HTML suffix. So once we enter those, when we put in the abbreviated string again, it brings up the web page, and it only shows us that bit there. If you notice, though, we've lost most of the formatting that made this an interesting page to begin with. The reason that is because by clipping out everything else, we lose all the class definitions and all of the JavaScript that might make this sort of look interesting. So, in order to get around that, we have another couple of variables that we can set, which scope the amount of area we do clipping to. Much the same way that HTML prefix and HTML suffix bracketed the area that we wanted to keep, we can add scope prefix and scope suffix to further constrain, to say that this is the area to clip from and to retain everything beyond that. In this case, we're going to give it a regular expression to say, okay, keep everything up to and including the body tag and everything after the end body tag. It's the scope prefix keep and the scope suffix keep that say everything up to and including. If those are set to be false, it would be everything up to, but not including what is matched. And that gives us a much nicer result. Here we have the coloring that we really wanted. Beyond that, though, we can do more. We can make this truly sort of two-way. We can not only display a certain section of UI, but we can actually pull information off of that and broadcast it as a property from our component. In a very similar manner, we're going to add a field1 prefix and a field1 suffix, which, yet again, are more regular expressions, and these tell it what piece to clip, not for display, but for broadcast. I'm going to choose to clip the last updated date you see there. And once again, you can work these out by looking at the actual HTML, finding what looks to be a unique string, and a little bit of experimentation. You can work out how best specify the bit to clip. So you can see now, when we have updated the screen, the bottom field here, the field 1 output, fills in with the data that we have there. So you can imagine with the many websites on the World Wide Web throughout the world, and many websites I'm sure within your own company's intranet, this is a great way to take them and bring them instantly as components to make your composite apps more interesting. Of course, this is dependent on the backend HTML that these pages are drawn with, and if that changes, you have to update your Clipper component with new regular expressions to find the new HTML. But that's a relatively simple task given that it's so accessible and you just do it through advanced properties.